Okay.
Okay.
Yes. And then Carol Baker joined as well. I don't know if you've met Carol.
Okay, this is the Statistical Modeling and Analytical Research Tools meeting for Thursday, September 24th, 2020. So call to order. So to take a roll call, this is Henry Thayer as moderator or whatever I am. And if we can go around and you can call, enter into the record who's here. Jason, go ahead and start.
Jason Ralph is here.
David Fornaro.
Jonathan David LaBelle here.
Susan Marcus.
Roland Benjamin.
Okay. All right, there is a quorum. The next item is item 3 on the agenda is approval of minutes. Colleen, are those minutes recorded from August 27th? I don't think we had a meeting on
We
it.
didn't have a meeting.
No, August 27th, you didn't have a meeting because we had some technical difficulties with.
Yeah, the licensing.
Yeah, so you didn't have a meeting then. You had a meeting in July, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if you have those minutes or not. Did you guys receive?
No, we do not. I haven't, excuse me, I haven't seen them on the town's website.
I think that they've been posted. So what we can do is I'll check with Rob. If it's okay with you folks, we will email them to you. You can take a look and make sure that you don't have any changes. And then at your next committee meeting, you could actually approve them.
Right.
They've been posted on Secretary of State, I believe, as draft minutes, if I recall. So if you guys haven't seen them, I'll tell Rob, we'll make sure that we send you the minutes as the committee and make sure that you don't have any other changes. And then you can approve them in their final form at your next meeting. If that's okay with you all.
We're going to have to make that work,
Okay.
It's just as long as they're on the town's website, people can access them, then, I don't think we're going to run into any open meeting law problems, okay?
No. They got recorded to or posted to Secretary of State.
Yeah.
I believe so. I'll double check that with Rob tomorrow. Make sure you guys are set.
Okay, item 4.
I'm sorry, Henry, July 23rd. Was that your meeting?
Yeah, it'd be the 4th Thursday of the month.
But then okay. Did you meet on July 2nd as well?
I don't recall off the top of my head. Anybody?
I think
Yes.
that
Yes, we
rings a
did.
bell.
Because you were going to have a meeting like the end of June and it got postponed a week or something.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Okay.
July
And
2.
I'll just check and make sure that you can have both sets of those minutes.
Okay. Item 4, correspondence and public comment. Do we have any? Is anyone from the public out there?
So Henry, I don't know, can you folks see the attendees list?
No, I can't.
Yeah, I can.
So on the bottom of your computer screen should be like where the mute and video is. There's a
Okay.
button. If you click that icon, it will pull up both participants. It'll pull up a list and attendees. And the
Eric Harley.
click.
Okay. Is there any comment from the public?
There's no public here.
Okay, then we can move on. The first discussion item, item 5, has to do with committee governance. And what Rob and I talked about, and I think we all talked about as a committee, is setting up the committee governance where right now I'm the coordinator. There is no vice coordinator or anything. And we'd want to talk about whether or not someone would be willing to take that on. I want to.
Wait. Didn't we resolved that issue? I thought.
Okay, what do we do, Susan?
I don't know.
Roland was the vice coordinator.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I think that's right. Roland.
Roland, do you have video?
You know, I don't. I have it somewhere. I don't know how to actually enable it. I'm not sure what's
It
going
looks
on.
like your video's on, but we don't see you, so.
Yeah.
Is there a button in the lower left-hand portion of your screen, Roland?
Yeah, I think it's a hardware thing, not a.
Okay.
I don't think my camera's actually. In order to enable it, whatever, I have to shut off and.
We all know what you look like.
Yes, I wrote down in my notes that Henry is, that Roland is the alternate coordinator.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Susan.
And Henry, that may have been why Rob mentioned if you folks wanted to take that off of your agendas in the future. It sounds like you have resolved that.
Yeah, I think we can take governance off. I think we've beaten that horse.
Yeah.
Dead.
Okay, so taking that off, B on here is the mission of the committee. Now, Jonathan, you had written a statement that you had emailed us. Do you want to walk us through that?
I missed that.
If you can put it up.
He doesn't seem to hear you.
Jonathan, are you there? Jonathan?
I couldn't hear what you said.
Can you bring up that email or do you want me to do it for you?
Well, that's not the mission that I sent. What the information I sent had to do with item C, coordination with other committees. Did we come up with I thought we came up with the mission as well in July, didn't
No.
we? Or no?
No. What
No?
we agreed to do at the next meeting, and I don't think we have enough people to do it tonight, is we were each going to have our 1 minute, 3 minute, some short elevator speech about what the committee does. That's what I recall.
Okay. But Jonathan, I found that statement that you wrote in there very interesting. And I still,
Okay. I mean, I can read that if you like.
I wanted you to walk us through that because it was very interesting and it makes for a good discussion point. Can you bring it up or would you like me to bring it up?
I don't know. Truthfully, I'm not sure how to do that.
All right. Hold on a sec.
When did you send that, Jonathan? I don't remember seeing that.
I didn't see it either.
I just sent it to Henry this afternoon.
All right. What I'm going to do now is let me see this thing. I'm going to share my screen. If I can. It says host disabled participant screen.
Yeah,
sharing.
Colleen has to make you the host or release so you can share.
Oh, try now, Henry. I've allowed all panelists to share.
Okay, can everybody see this?
Yep.
Okay, Jonathan, go ahead.
Well, all right. Actually, I don't know if I can read this fully. I've got some titles, but basically this was more related. This wasn't necessarily related to the mission, but maybe it could help with that. This was the discussion we had a couple meetings ago about, coordinating with, trying to reach out to other committees, that discussion of like, how would we approach the other committees to let them know we're available and what it is that we're doing. I don't know if I can move this. Yeah, okay. So it just says the SMART committee is available to assist in researching and analyzing information and data relevant to your tasks and agenda items at your discretion. Our goal is to help with your advisory or decision-making processes to improve clarity, transparency, rationale, and understanding, both for the board itself as well as for the general public. The SMART committee could also assist in presenting data, results, and conclusions, how it can be framed for best understanding and dissemination.
Okay, so, I want to open it up for discussion. Does anybody have any comments they'd like to make about this? Susan? I know you got something, so let's go.
Well, I think this was what we were each supposed to do for tonight's meeting. This was the idea of explaining in a few sentences what it is SMART is supposed to do. I think this is good. It's a lot of words to take in, but who is both for the board itself? Who's the board? Do you mean the SMART committee, Jonathan?
No, again, that's where, so the idea was, each of us were, if we wanted to approach, like the planning board or, the affordable housing committee, the different sustainability, some of the different entities.
Okay, so that would be both for your committee.
For them, for
as
whoever
well.
we're, this was really more designed to be the elevator pitch.
Right. So the only problem is, one small thing just to get us started. Both for the board itself, I think it changes voice. You've got, in the first line, it says relevant to your tasks and agenda. This ought to say both for your, whatever the entity is, agency, as well as for the general public. That's my first tiny comment. You see what I mean? Both for the board, it's the board that we haven't discussed who the board is, and you've written it in the second person.
Well, right. If this is the mission, if this ends up being the work, if this is the template for the mission statement for the committee, then if some of the concepts here people agree with, then we just need to change the phrasing of it.
Well, I don't know that we're ready. I don't know that we're writing the mission statement. I think it's good. It's a great start. It's better than what I came up with for describing what it is that we do. So I don't think I need to say it. I think it just for that thing that's confusing, the board itself. Otherwise, I think it seems about right.
Yeah, it's short and sweet.
Yeah, I was going to say it's very concise. I like that about it.
It's not a lot, and it's attention getting. Given that whoever you're doing the elevator pitch for has an attention span of about 7 or 8 seconds, you're going to be able to at least get their attention on what we do. That's in there.
Yeah, and I think it's good because it says we're here to help you with your advisory and decision-making processes. And the goal of that is to make better decisions, which is what all that clarity, transparency, rationale, and understanding says. The one thing it doesn't say, and perhaps it doesn't need to, is that it doesn't say anything, and since it's for these other committees, I'm not sure it needs to, but the one thing I found with the Economic Development Committee is that they have this little database, and I tried to get them, I sort of quit trying, but I tried to get them to write, the person who put it together, I tried to get him to write a data dictionary of the elements in the database, because I think that's a general thing that we're going to try to do as a committee, is to be clear about what the data are that we have and how they're defined and where they are and how often they're updated and all that kind of stuff. And this doesn't mention anything about that, but that could be more backroom stuff that we just know about.
Yeah.
Roland, what do you have to say?
Well, I'm actually looking in the second section which starts with our goal. I'm almost looking at that line. It's good. I think Jonathan said this is intended to be how we communicate initially with other boards, but that line itself could really mirrors a lot of the ideas we would want for our mission statement to be anyway.
I think so too.
And maybe we just literally just almost take that language, clean it up by voice, as you mentioned, Susan, and call that the mission. I don't.
Yeah, just take the, you just say our goal is to help with advisory and decision-making processes.
Yeah. Well, except we're missing Kirsten, Lauren, and Jocelyn, and I think they ought to weigh in on a mission statement before we get to the point of closure on that. But yeah, I agree. I think that is pretty much what we're trying to do.
So maybe we just forward that to the next agenda to say, this is the mission statement. Let's vote on it or adjust.
Right.
Right.
Can I ask you, Jonathan, to fix that last clause, both for the board itself as well as for the general? Just put it in the you voice, the second person. Do you want me to do that? Do you understand what I'm talking about?
Generally.
Okay.
Susan, it's Colleen. Is it helpful for us as staff to clean that up a bit and then put it in draft form for you folks for your next agenda?
Oh, sure. That's good.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, that'd be fine. And it doesn't need much. I mean, the only thing I see that it needs is that switch of voice.
Yeah, I'll share that with Rob. That's not a problem.
Okay.
Colleen, could you circulate that before you get to the minutes for the next meeting? You know, like maybe this week sometime, just so we have a copy of it.
Yeah, and we could put this in draft form, not this on your agenda, but we could say that this item will be on the agenda for your next meeting so that you can adopt it. That way at your next meeting, if there's something you want to tweak or add. Is that what you're thinking? That you
But I think David's asking to have it before the next meeting so that we can have thought about it.
Yeah.
Oh,
exactly.
sure. Yeah, I'm sorry. Of course. Yeah, that's not a problem at all, David. We'll get that out. How about the beginning of next week?
Good.
Okay.
All right, we're zipping right along. We're almost finished.
Okay, item D then, let me stop sharing. And we can go to item D. Okay, item D is, let's see, where is it? Mission core tax. Tax calculator tool, or was it, are we on item C, the coordination with other committees? I think that's what we discussed our elevator pitch on. Item D is Rob's tax calculator tool, and he's not here.
Right.
And so I'd like him to talk to us about that a little bit. Item E is the need for a data repository. What do we have and what do we need? Now, as far as a data repository is concerned, what I did was we got a table, a spreadsheet from Jay Newsom, and that's that Secretary of State spreadsheet. And I'm going to share one more time as soon as I bring it up. So I took a shot at making a database just to see what I could do, see how it would come out. And what I did is I used Microsoft Access. And I'm bringing this up. I'll share it as soon as the thing comes up.
Henry, can I just say that I think this belongs, Jay's thing, even though you did some work on it, belongs in a further down in the second penultimate item as a report out from what we got from the Economic Development Committee.
Okay, do you want to move it then to item H on the agenda? What I was more concerned about is I wanted to talk about Microsoft Access infrastructure as far as setting databases up. Is that okay?
I think we've discussed how we don't want to do that.
In what sense? I don't understand.
Well, I don't want this to be just a conversation between you and me, but I think what we talked about is that we want to find out from as many groups in town as we can what data they currently use in any decision-making procedures they have, and just be in the data gathering mode, trying to figure out what's what, and then decide whether any of it's, then decide what to do with it.
Yeah, so we can hold.
So I don't think we need to take, I mean, if you've done that work, that might be useful for the Economic Development Committee, if you've tried to make a database out of that. But I don't think that's really, I think we can just explain what Jay's database was when we get to that point.
Okay, when we get to, it's item G on the agenda.
And just leave it at that, because I don't think we need to discuss how it works as a database myself, but that's.
Now, what I was just trying to show that easily, we could extract data from different sources, like the Secretary of State, right? And I extracted a table from the census. And the only thing I wanted to demonstrate is that these tables could be extracted into Microsoft Access, and then we could add to that and slice and dice the data as we need it. But that structure, I mean, that we can do that at a later date once we have an inventory of what people are using out there.
Yeah.
That sound acceptable?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's Colleen. Is it helpful to your group if the GIS and the police folks that are here to talk about the data? I know we put it at the end of your agenda. Would it be helpful for you folks to hear from them?
Yes.
Move it up and hear what the town, what they can do. And I don't know if that helps you in then deciding what your repositories and so on.
Yeah.
Because both I see Carol Baker's here she's the GIS coordinator. And Sergeant Souza and Captain Healy from the police department are both here. So I don't know how you folks were planning to talk with them tonight or how you wanted to interact, but because I know Rob, he still isn't here. His other meeting's still running late. So
yeah.
That's building committee. That'll go all night.
It could. But Henry, did you have a sense of what you wanted to talk to these folks about?
Yeah, I think what I'd like to do is, Mark, Sergeant Souza, and Carol, why don't you each introduce yourself to the committee? I'm not so sure that everybody knows who you are. I mean, I certainly know who Mark is, because he's been around for quite a while. I don't know Sergeant Souza, and I don't know Carol Baker.
I know Carol Baker.
You know, okay. So let's start with Mark. Mark, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Well, good evening. Again, Captain Healy with the South Kingstown Police Department. I've been with the department about 32 years now, and have been involved in most of the different divisions within the department. I've also worked specifically within our highway safety office, which Sergeant Souza is now the coordinator of. I'll let him talk a little bit about some of his stuff he's doing with the highway safety and introduce himself. Mike?
How you doing? Sergeant Souza with the police department. I've been here for a little over 14 years. Currently the traffic sergeant for the unit for the department. It's been going on for it's a newer position that was created about a year and a half ago. One of the tasks I deal with quite often now is highway safety, as Captain Healy had mentioned. And part of that is the grants that entail speed enforcement, click it a ticket, DUI enforcement. One of the other duties I'm using is the variable message boards that you'll see throughout town. We get a lot of data from those variable message boards for the volume of traffic, the speed of the vehicles, time of day. And I'm also an action reconstructionist for the town, so we use a lot of that information to try and hit target areas throughout town. And we use we try to get a lot of information from IMC.
From what? From IMC? What's IMC?
the system we use within the police department that tracks all of our records for accident reports, arrest reports, any contacts. It could be a medical call, but that's the system we use that logs everything in. And we're able to, go ahead, Cap.
That program's our records database. We have a records clerk who can use that to mine different types of information out of it that's been entered by the department over the years. We've had that program, I'd say, well over 10 years now, so there is a significant database there. Some of the data is certainly easier to mine than others. We're currently working on a project now where some of our information is plotted by longitude, latitude, and other information is plotted by geocodes, which are assigned codes to different areas of the town. So we use that to sometimes just map out where accidents might be or where some of the high traffic areas are. And certainly we can do our crime statistics through that. If you guys have ever seen, I believe it's the annual report, there's a significant amount of crime statistics within that. That's all printed up through that program.
Mark, let me ask you a question. How much of the data that you have is public consumable versus confidential?
I'll ask the exact same question.
Okay.
Most of it is probably public information. When you start getting into date of birth, social security numbers, phone numbers,
Yeah.
that stuff can certainly be redacted out of it. But most of it's public information.
Okay, is any of it published on any websites, or is it just by request?
Most of it's not published, probably. Not information that would be statistically useful. The stuff that we do publish would be, crime reports, specific reports. We might publish an accident report as public information, but the statistics from that we don't necessarily publish, with the exception of like the annual report or a very specific report that the town manager or somebody has requested, DOT, whoever it may be.
Who's doing your reporting breakout? Is it Clint?
He typically retrieves the data for us. Different individual users would, assemble their own reports depending on who it is. For example, Sergeant Souza completes monthly reports, annual reports for the Department of Transportation, Highway Safety Office.
Yep.
Can we see any of those reports to see what kind of information you're reporting?
Yeah,
I mean, you've explained a little bit, but it would be just useful to, if there is a monthly traffic report that goes to RIDOT, for instance, that would be helpful, or the annual crime reports. I guess we should.
Yeah, again, the annual crime reports are in the town website, the annual report.
Okay.
The traffic reports that we send to the Department of Transportation, much of that information that we send up is reimbursement for grant funding. So it's limited in useful statistical data. It talks more about the hours that the officers work.
Okay.
And reimbursement in dollars and cents. It does indicate the number of stops and summonses that we give out. But I mean, those reports wouldn't be as useful as a specific derived report that we could also get out of IMC, our database, depending on what somebody's looking for.
Okay, why don't we then take some time between now and the next meeting and go over to the town's website and see what's out there.
Is there, Is there something that you are you're interested in, like an answer you're interested in finding with your data, or in connection with someone else's data that we could help with? Not sure if
I'm not
the
sure
purpose.
I'm not sure right off the top of my head. There could be projects though that we do work on, you know, from time to time to try to answer specific questions, where you guys might be able to help us. But off the top of my head, I don't have one, you know, that we're stuck on trying to retrieve data or something like that.
Okay.
So generally you feel that when you do have to respond to either requests or think about the strategy going forward for the police department, you have the kind of data that you need to make decisions?
Most of the time we do through that IMC database. Our records clerk can mine out a significant amount of data, and even, you know, present it on different types of reports, whether they're bar graphs, pie graphs, charts. This IMC that we talk about will create all that for us.
Is this IMC, is this a standard tool used by other police departments, or is it?
It's used by all police departments in Rhode Island with the exception of Providence Police. They have a different database that they use.
So you have access to other towns' data as well?
Not directly. We would have to go through that department for their information.
When you're looking at the data, like, what do you, like, what's the goal? Like, what do you, when you're analyzing it, what's your purpose?
Let me break it down to what Sergeant Souza works on. He specifically works on the highway safety programs, our speed enforcement, accident reduction. So a lot of the reports that he's looking at are traffic volumes, speed volumes, accident numbers for specific areas or specific roads, or even certain parts of roads. For example, Route 1 that traverses the entire town. We've got a few spots on Route 1 where we do a significant amount of speed enforcement. We see that the speeds on some parts of it are higher than others. One of the studies that we'll be doing sometime in the next few months is just doing an evaluation of the Old Tower Hill Road project to see if there's a reduction in accidents, see if we can determine if there's a reduction in speed based on the new design of the road. We have hypothesized that both speed and accidents have already been reduced by the new design of the road. We'd like to get some hard data over the next few months to see if that's accurate.
I've seen some along Mattoon Schoolhouse Road where I live. I've seen some little electronic boxes popping up on poles. Does this have to do with that kind of data collection?
That data collection is done through the town engineer, Richard Babonis. He's typically doing volume counts with that. Mike, does he also do speeds with the lines across the road?
So I think it's just volume.
When you see our variable message boards, the trailers out there on the sides of the roads, many of those times that you see them, they're doing studies, as well as showing people that what their speed are or flashing at them. They're also conducting studies for volume and speeds.
Okay.
Do we have any speed cameras around town, say around schools, the way they have in Providence, which automatically do any ticketing based on?
We don't have any cameras in South Kingstown. The speed cameras are very specific under the Rhode Island laws that they can only be used in school zones. So we have had discussions with the town manager about that type of a strategy in the school zones. It's something that he's interested in exploring.
I'm a little interested in the applicability on the old the Tower Hill Road project. Obviously, you must have some kind of baseline information with speeds and accidents before this project. Is that going to end up being an official report that gets done, or an official analysis, or is it just hoping to see these numbers in a month or two have some?
When you say an official report, I assume you're talking about something that's published and shared with the public. Not necessarily something that we had planned on doing. We would type of a report and put it into our files for comparison. It's something that if we had the opportunity, we would share with DOT. Is there any reasoning behind that? No, I mean, if there's a request for it, or if there's somebody that wants it, such as this, we'd certainly be willing to share it with them. It's not secret information or anything like that.
Right.
It's just we don't typically have people asking us for that information. It's more information that we use to plan for our own purposes. But it's certainly available if somebody wanted it.
Well, building
Yeah.
on,
Oh,
no,
I'm
go ahead.
sorry.
No, go ahead,
Yeah.
Roland.
Okay, I was just, I remember several years ago, there were some discussions about, had to do with the healthy roads or healthy places by design.
Places
They
by
were talking
design.
about bump outs on Main Street on our section down towards downtown Wakefield. And that was one of those, anytime you have those structures, it was, as you said, theorized that this is going to handle traffic better. And it would be helpful if there's something formal like that, whether it's even an internal document for decision making or whatever. I was just thinking it's something that can help with future decisions, if it's, as long as it's not siloed in
Sergeant, were you doing a study on Main Street when you had the trailers out there recently?
Yes, there is definitely some data that, even if I hadn't necessarily saved it, I can go back within the software and plug in a date that the trailer would have been on Main Street and get the data from that time. So we had done it in the past, just for volume and stuff like that, prior to the pedestrian crosswalk grant enforcement. But there's definitely some data that can be pulled.
And building on Roland's question, will RIDA, which came up with this design for us on Old Tower Hill Road, will they do any assessment of whether this design has improved safety, reduced speed?
I don't know that answer, if they plan on doing any or not. They did do some studies leading into the redevelopment of that roadway. So I don't know if they have plans to do follow-up or not.
Okay.
And the data is always there for accident reports. That's something that's just an ongoing analysis of accidents year after year after year. So that data will be there. The speed data, that's something that we'll look at anyways within ourselves. I just don't know if DOT will be looking at speed data.
This might be a little more internal discussion, but because we're, as committee members, we're still a relatively new committee, and we're not really sure what our capacity is going to be. But like in general, with all the information, the data you're talking about, do you feel like you have the full capacity to harness the information and decipher it and use it for your means, or do you feel like having a committee such as what we have, analyzing that and breaking it down, understanding what your goals are, like that having this kind of a group look at it would be helpful?
There's certainly occasions where we might have questions about statistical significance of data. in some of our analysis that we conduct. For example, the racial profiling reports that they do annually, that's completed by the Connecticut University, and they do a data analysis, complete data analysis of that, and they look into statistics that are way over my head, and they analyze it for us though. But there's other projects where you know, sometimes we may need to request it or have somebody look at data to see if what we're seeing is statistically significant, or if it's just numbers that are skewed for some reason. Do I have a specific project in mind? Not at this time.
Can we go back to that racial profiling thing that the University of Connecticut did?
Yeah.
I remember seeing that a year ago or something. It was written up in the Independent. Is that right? Did the Independent
I'm
cover?
not familiar with the article that you're talking about. They published a report. I think the last one was 2 years ago, but
Okay.
it may have been last year. A copy of that's on the Department of Transportation website. Copy of those reports is actually a few of them.
Okay.
And they analyze the data for the entire state.
Does anybody else have any more questions for Mark? I don't want to forget about Carol because she's looking at me, looks lonely down there. So I'm very interested to hear about the GIS data.
Well, I do have one more question for
Go ahead, Susan.
Mr. Souza. Did you say that you you wipe out some of the data, but you could go back and give it a date and look at it? So I just have a storage question of how.
So the variable message boards work with through a software called All Traffic Solutions. So they store all that data. I can go in for a particular date with a particular variable message board and retrieve previous data that I hadn't downloaded or saved anywhere else. So I've been playing around with the software a little bit over the last few months and realized there's a lot more data that I can pull out of there that I thought once I moved the trailer, I figured the stuff was gone, but I can go back and recapture that at a later time. You know, if the trailer was there a year ago, I can go back to that date and time as long as I recall the date and time that it was there and I can get it. So, I mean, it's limited as to what it has. It's usually volume. It's the amount of cars per hour. There's not a ton of data that you're getting. And it's only one direction. It's towards the trailer, not anything that's going away from
Oh,
it.
yeah. All right.
But, you know, it's still useful, you know.
So this is a separate database from your IMC database. This is
Yes. All Traffic Solutions is the software that we use in connection with the 3 variable message boards that we currently have.
Yeah. Okay. One other question, Mark. Do we keep any data on cybercrime? Because I don't know about you folks, but it's like not a week goes by where I don't get a phone call telling me there's a warrant out for my arrest for some reason or another. And I know that these calls sound very threatening, but then again, as if they were going to arrest me, I would think that they would show up. So, but the senior citizens in town get extremely upset over this stuff, at least from what I've heard. Do we try to investigate any of this? Do we keep any data about it? Where we think the potential suspects could be and how to shut it down?
Go ahead, Mike.
So typically and it's usually when it gets to say the level of detectives, usually the victims are elderly. Usually the younger population they just hang up on them. They know it's fraudulent, but the elderly do fall victim to these crimes. And so if the victim is out of money, then the initial report will be taken by a patrolman, and then it'll be forwarded up to detectives if there's anything that they can follow up on, depending on how the money was transferred. How did they, how were they victimized? How did they get the funds to the offender?
Yeah.
If it's something that they can follow up on, we do. Typically, the offenders aren't even in U.S. borders. they're overseas, you know, they're not local. But if it is, it still has to meet a certain threshold before, say, the FBI or the federal agencies will get involved. Typically, these offenders are not local, so we're limited as to how far we can see it through. And you know, and they're smart. They make sure that they're using means to which we could not get the money back. You know, using a vanilla card or Apple iTunes card. You can still trace this eventually through search warrants, but to be able to actually find the culprit and put handcuffs on them, you know, they're nowhere near Rhode Island. So the best thing we can do is really to educate us, our elderly citizens, so they just don't fall victim to it. Because unless it meets a certain threshold, the feds won't even touch it.
Yeah, but we don't have any stats or anything, do we?
We
Might
could
be something we
generate
could get.
them. Yeah.
Mark, you were going to say something?
No, we could generate those numbers. Certainly they could go through our database and see what types of reports we've had, the numbers of reports that we've had of people falling for that type of crimes.
Particular, maybe even like the time of year too. Usually tax season. It's usually when we see a spike.
Yeah.
You know, people's social securities are, you know, taken advantage of their unemployment. Right now, we saw it early onset with Corona was the unemployment stuff. Went through the roof. And it seems like it's backed off since people figured it out. But, you know, there's certain times of year that it's definitely more prevalent than others.
Yeah. Okay. Carol.
Well, wait, should we thank the two officers and invite them to leave our meeting if they would like to?
That's a good idea.
Well, I'm going to stick around and listen to Carol. We work together often.
How you doing, Mark?
I'm doing good. She's always got some exciting information, and we're always learning from her, so I'm going to stick around.
Okay, well, I just wanted to make sure you felt comfortable if you wanted to go.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
Carol.
All right, Mark, you've really put the pressure on me now. So my name is Carol Baker. I'm the GIS administrator for the town. I have been the GIS administrator for 22 years. I have been the one and only GIS administrator, for better or for worse. GIS stands for Geographic Information System. I could go on for hours, but I'll try to boil it down very quickly. I think most of you have used it or know what it is. It's a computerized mapping system where you can take any data that has an XY coordinate, whether it's a point, a line, or a polygon, or an aerial photo, and input it into the system. And then once you do that, it doesn't matter what scale the map was at or anything like that. You can overlay the data on top of it, on top of itself. So as I always say, that's the G in GIS. So, you know, we have zoning and roads and parcels and aerial photos and voting districts and schools and parks and lots and lots of different data layers. But what really makes GIS powerful is the I in GIS, and that's the information. So I think most of you have been online and have used the web GIS. So you can point to a polygon, and unless there's any information, let's say it's, you know, a lot. Well, it's just a lot on a piece of paper. Well, we have that parcel data layer is coded for, it has its plat and its lot. What type of parcel it is? Is it a road? Is it a right of way? Is it a parcel? Is it a body of water? What zone is it? So all of that is the I is in a table. So now if you want to say, hey, show me where plat 96-2 lot 4 is, you can find it. And I maintain that data layer on a monthly basis as maps are recorded and things come into the tax, into the tax assessor's office. But what really makes it powerful is that as long as I have a unique ID, so I put together plat and lot, I can link that. I can now link the parcels to the entire assessing vision database. So the web GIS that you guys use, when you search on street address or you search on name, it's actually linking to the vision database. All right, so I have done, while I physically sit in the planning department, My job is just, as I say, spread the gospel of GIS to all the different departments. I've worked with police and an assessor and the town manager. I do a lot of work for public services.
Oh, no.
Uh-oh.
Oh, no.
No, Carol,
What's
where
that?
are you?
Load the data, and they know they do stormwater inspections and catch basins and sewer inspections. So there's just very much going on. So much of what I do is maintain databases. So maintain the different data layers. We get a new road, we get a new parcel, there's a zone change. I work with, I am the, for better or for worse, it's worse most of the time. I am the official liaison between the Census Bureau. So whenever a census is done, I can download that data as to census tracts and the block groups and the blocks, and link all that information, population and racial, ethnicity, whatever, income brackets and things like that. So I work on what people, as I would say, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. I do a lot of work for public services. I do map requests. I do analyses. All of them, I make all the maps in town. All the 46 maps that are in the comp plan I made. I will get a call from Mark sometimes, and he'll say, "Hey, Carol, we had an accident at X, Y, and Z. Can you make me a map that I need to use in court for accident reconstruction?" So a fair amount of my work is making hard copy maps. A fair amount of my work is maintaining data. And the other part is working with the different departments and helping them do analyses. I work with Jean Bouchard, the assessor, a lot. Pardon my landline. Yes, I still have one. And with the town manager, we did a heat map for showing the changes in tax assessing rates from the 2015 to the 2018 reval.
For that.
Mine was red hot.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. There were two hotspots along the coast, but also along Route 2, up by Route 138 and Route 2, because all of a sudden that's now, subdivisions are going in, and now people are living there and commuting to Providence because it's a straight shot. So, and then the one last thing I'll say is that people will often come in and say, "Carol, do you have a map showing whatever?" And what I say is, the question you should be asking is, do I have the data that I can make the map? I can make a map of any color, shape, size, as long as I have the information. I do not accept map requests from the public, else I would be inundated. I'm inundated as it is.
Yeah.
For 8 or 9 years, I had a full-time GIS analyst. So we had two full-time GIS folks. He left for the private sector and the position was never filled. So I have more than enough to keep me busy. But we've developed the site, the WebGIS you have seen, so to make all of this data available to town staff and the public. I get calls from both town staff and the public looking for help about how to use the WebGIS. They do a butters maps. They want a map of their property. They want to know what their taxes are or what their house was assessed at. They want to know what their neighbor was assessed at. And all that information is public information. I distribute the GIS data upon request because they are considered public records. I distribute them in the format in which the town maintains them. So unless you have GIS software, giving you a GIS data layer of the parcel database isn't going to help you. But I distribute them all the time. Lots of folks use it. There's no cost, particularly now that we have an FTP site. I just upload it to the FTP site and send the link to who's ever the public. It's often engineering firms, it's the Nature Conservancy, universities want to use it. Have I covered everything?
Yeah.
In terms of stats, I don't maintain statistics. If you ask me, Carol, how many parcels do we have in town? Well, we have 12,876 at last count, I think. John Schock every year for this annual report needs to know how many miles of roads do we have in town, broken down by state, town, and private. I work with the finance department for their GASB, their government Accounting Standards Bureau report every year. They need to know how, in terms of town assets, how many stormwater catch basins do we have? How many manholes do we have? How many, you know, because those are considered assets for what the town is worth. How many paved roads, the condition of paved roads. So
How do you do condition of paved roads?
that is maintained, that data is, well, we hired a firm 10 years ago. And they did a condition assessment for all the roads, and now the Public Services Department maintains that, and they rank it and they code it, and I have that information, and they have roads are done on a as needed basis on a rotating schedule. So have I overwhelmed you with too much, or?
Just a couple of questions on my part,
Please.
Carol. Do you do any maps for private industry? For example, if a developer comes into town, and I mean, we've got projects going on now that the Economic Development Commission and the Planning Board is looking at, and a private company comes to you and says, Carol, we want you to do a GIS map of this parcel so we can see who all the abutters are, elevation and that type of stuff. Do you provide that service?
No, I do not. However, I've never really had a developer need to, because they already have all that in-house capability themselves. They might say, Carol, can you give me, you know, I need your zoning and your roads, and I'll give them all the data layers that they need.
Yeah.
But they already have their own in-house capability.
Yeah.
And if a member of the public requests a map, I'll often take them to the WebGIS and walk them through how they can make their very own. They can make it as a PDF and download it and print it. If a member of the public would like a map that I have made for any town staff, I have made literally, I have a serial map list. I've made over 5,000 maps for town staff since I've been here, since 1997. Oh my word, it's gonna be 23 years next week. Oh my word, sorry. And there's a map serial number in the bottom, and as long as it's if it's a map that's made for a town staff, I will print a copy of that map at cost and sell and give it to the public. Does that answer your question, Henry?
Yeah, and my second question, some of the data that you have, I mean, the raw data, is it let me see if I can ask this the right way. Is it table driven, like an Excel spreadsheet type data, or is it something else?
I can take any tabular data and then I import it into the GIS, so it's in a format that the GIS can use.
All right, can you go in the reverse though?
Yes, I can export as well. Ask anybody. I make spreadsheets all the time.
Okay.
And the thing is, what happens is that, and this has been policy since day one, and I think it's for most town staff, is that I don't take requests directly from boards and commissions, from individuals from the boards and commission. It has to go through the planning board, the planning department staff person who staffs it. So like if, except if it's Rob, he gets whatever he wants. So if, let's say, Henry, you said, Carol, can you do me an analysis of so-and-so? I'm not exactly sure how that, you would probably funnel that through Rob. And Rob would decide if that would be a good, Rob, Henry was just asking me if I can export data and you know, give information to people. And I was basically saying, I don't take direct requests from the boards and commissions. It gets funneled through either if it's the planning board, Jay or Brian, or I think these folks, since it's a subcommittee, they would be funneled perhaps through you. I mean, Henry, I'd be happy to talk to you as to whether or not that's possible and things like that.
Yeah.
But I have a very long list of things that I need to do, and I prioritize them with Director of Planning and with Rob on as needed basis.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
I
Susan.
have a comment and a couple of questions. First comment is I've actually used the GIS quite a bit, and it's fantastic.
Nice.
I've also used GIS, or I should say tried to use whatever, GIS type information is available in other towns outside Rhode Island. This is in regard to like sort of real estate research.
Yep.
And I've never found one that's better than this one. And most
You're my
towns,
new favorite person.
a lot of towns really just still have old sort of PDF maps, and you download a key sheet, and you download the map you want, and it's really like clunky, and you can't really, then they have another place you go where you find out the tax information, and it's, so this is a tremendous system.
Well, thank you, David. It's been a long time. We were the first town to have a townwide GIS. Well, I shouldn't say that. Block Island did. Block Island was the test case. URI started digitizing their parcels back in 1990, whatever. And actually I used to work at URI before I came to the town doing GIS. And I actually, for the first 10 years that I worked for the town, I worked 4 days a week for South Kingstown and 1 day a week for Block Island. So I helped them with their GIS development.
Yeah, it's a great system. There's an enormous amount of information there. It's well presented. So I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
One is, so WebGIS is a third-party application, a third-party service.
It's hosted by our GIS consultant, CDM Smith. I give them the data and I give them the maps or the data layers and the tabular data, and they build, it's all in HTML5. This is actually the third iteration because the GIS software is constantly evolving. Okay,
that's kind of what I was getting at is does the data live, do we have a data server in which the data lives, or is it all uploaded to their system? And
it's uploaded to their, I send CDM Smith updated data as I update it. So it's what you're seeing on the WebGIS is usually the most recent. I update parcels usually 4 or 5 times a year. The Vision database, which is actually 2 different things. In fact, when you log on in the upper left-hand corner below the search box, it'll say as of, it'll say the parcel boundaries are as of a certain date and the ownership information as of a.
Yep.
So the ownership information.
I'm looking at it on my other computer over here.
The ownership information is from Vision, and I update that every 2 to 3 weeks as I get it from the assessor.
And so the data layers, are you able to add, like, are you constrained by their system in the types of data you can upload and present, or how it's?
No, pretty much. I mean, I can add any data layer, any aerial photo. In fact, I've been meaning to do this for the last 2 months. DOT is flying the state every year, and we'll be having 2028 aerial photos up on the WebGIS, hopefully within the next couple weeks. We have been using CDM Smith. It used to be CDM, Camp Dresser and McKee. It's an internationally known engineering firm, but they're based out of Cambridge, Mass. They bought up Smith, which was a big transportation modeling company. So now it's CDM Smith, but they've been fabulous. They host both the public and the town staff site at extremely reasonable prices because we were one of their first municipal sites in South Kingstown. We have a very good relationship with them. We get more money. We get a very good bang for our buck. And they're extremely responsive. The main person I work with, his friend has a big sailboat, and even when he's off sailing to Martha's Vineyard, he has his laptop and his hotspot, and he responds the next day. I told him he needs to leave his laptop at home, but he doesn't.
But David, to your point, one of the things that is a constraint here is the data that are available to us. We don't have flow data, so we can't do network analyses of the road network, which aggravates the heck out of me, but we don't have those data. So,
Wait, I didn't hear what you said, Rob. You don't have what data?
Flow data. We don't have any data about, how many vehicles hit point A and point B and point C on Route 1 at any given, on any given day. We don't have any information about the traffic volumes that can be used to do a dynamic network analysis. We can't do network analyses right now.
Oh, because we just heard about traffic volumes, but I hadn't thought about it. They're 1-point traffic volumes. Is that
They're
the issue?
1-point traffic volumes.
Okay.
Although you can string 1 points together, we haven't got that. We haven't done that stringing.
Rob, DOT doesn't collect that data? At least on state roads?
So DOT's, I don't know, Captain Healy may know better than I do. DOT's data are probably still pretty remote points. They're probably 138 at one side of URI, 138 at the other side of URI, and then 138 down at the hill or something.
You know, Rob, if you'd like to, I'd be happy. I know very well Shane White, who's the GIS, one of the head GIS guys for DOT. He actually worked for Fuss and O'Neill when they did our user needs analysis 20 years ago.
Right.
Small world. He has spent last year almost, I won't bore you guys with the GIS-ness of it all, turning the state road network into a network that is a lot smarter than it used to be. So I would be happy to reach out to him to see if they have some of that.
We should steal whatever they've got.
Yeah, and then Shane White was also the first executive director, actually the second executive director of RIGIS in town. The Rhode Island GIS department. So I will call up Shane and see what they have for flow data.
If they, that'd be beautiful. If they could tell us, what percentage of the traffic is going down 108, what percentage is going down, I don't know, Broad Rock, that'd be a beautiful thing to be able to know.
Yeah, Rob, maybe it's some offline next time you in the planning department, we can have a more detailed discussion about exactly what you want. But you're right, I can only put up what we have. which is a lot. Though I will say, David, I appreciate your kudos for the site. I will say other towns have very good sites, Charlestown and Westerly. Even my podunk, I physically live in Hopkinton, sorry guys. Even my podunk little town of Hopkinton has a WebGIS. More and more towns are going that way.
Well, like I said, I've looked at a lot of them in several states, and ours is the best one I've ever seen.
Well, I will just be quiet then.
Okay. Susan, anything else?
No, but I'm really glad I heard all that from Carol. I've known Carol for 12 years or something. I've gone to her with requests for maps repeatedly.
Yes, you have.
Yes, I have. And and I really enjoyed that description, Carol. That was great.
Good.
Carol, thank you so much for coming to this meeting and enlightening us. For me, I mean, I think I could talk to you for a whole day, but I won't. Very, very interesting. Okay, so that was the last agenda item, item H. Now, Rob, we skipped over some stuff because you weren't with us.
So now I think we could remind Carol and Captain Healy that if they want to leave, they could leave. They're welcome to stay.
I may stay for a bit, but
okay, good.
Thank you, Susan.
I just not one to sit in a meeting if I'm finished with the topic.
Yeah.
So what do you got?
Okay, so Rob, I'm just going backwards. Well, we had on here the tax calculator tool.
Yes.
Is there anything new that you want to talk to us about?
There's not, but I do think we have to keep it on the agenda and we have to sort of revisit that tool because I think there's going to be a potential application for the tool as it relates to calculating the cost of bonds as we come up on the school facilities project coming to February. I think there'll be interest in having that tool available. So I think it's worth sort of looking at again.
Okay. Then there's an agenda item on COVID-19 data needs. Given that we, the last time I tend to look at this data every day, and South Kingston's got a pretty low occurrence. And I mean, is there anything really to report other than we got a low occurrence of it?
So yeah, we've had this conversation, and again, we're at 131 cases total since the beginning of the pandemic. We had 5 additional cases this week. It's not, you know, the numbers don't shoot up here very much, but there's a bunch of data that the outside world has that suggests the next few weeks, the next couple of months may be very unpleasant in this part of the world.
Yeah.
Do we have any, do you have any sense of what's happening at URI since school
Yeah.
started?
Yeah, I wanted to ask about URI too.
Yeah, URI has, I don't know how much of what I know is publicly known. So I want to be a little careful here. There are a significant number of people who are in quarantine at URI. URI is using a local hotel as a quarantine location for positive cases. URI did have a couple of frat parties that were well advertised across the country across the state as having had a impact on positives. All URI hasn't been nearly as bad as like a PC or any of these other universities that we've been reading about elsewhere in the country. But there is an increased case. Their rate of positive tests is greater than the state rate. It's still below the sort of state trigger, but it's, you know, in the 3 to 5 instead of the 1 to 3 range. So you are
10% positives of those that were tested?
Yeah. Their positivity rate is higher than the state average.
Is it, and what is
Much higher than the town average.
And what is their testing rate? As what percentage of the? Do they have a plan?
It's a mandatory test for all students. I don't know how often the students are being tested though. So all students have been tested. How often they've been tested, I don't know. I don't know the rate of retest or the period between retests.
So, for instance, all Rhode Islanders have not been tested. So I wonder,
correct.
does the percent positivity scale with the number tested?
Yeah, I can't tell you. I don't know. Our positivity rate for the state is what? It's just below 1%.
Last I saw it was like 1.3, but that was last year.
No, yeah, 1.3, I think.
1.3.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the positivity rate at URI is closer to 3.
Wow.
Yeah, I wonder if, you know, because some of the data that you see about Rhode Island relative to some of the New England states, and we don't look so great, but our percentage of population being tested is way higher. So I wonder if the percent positivity is related to the percent actually tested. And so in URI's case, if the entire population is being tested versus the state population, maybe 10% of the people have been tested.
Right, but the design of this statistic is supposed to make that a non-factor. I mean, that's why you're.
Yeah, I get that, but I think at some below some minimum threshold, you know, like 1 or 2 cases can have a big impact.
Sure.
You know, your percentage.
Yeah, but we are talking about a student population of 15,000. I mean, it's not a very small N.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not a small N at all. I mean, 15,000 is
Yeah, it's like a small town.
right.
And Rob, they have, I know you've probably seen it. They have their own dashboard where they publicly share what they're doing. I'm assuming we might see more underneath as a town, but
Not a lot more, to be honest with you.
like at some point, does that information trigger any actions on yours? Because I just pulled it up. There's 7,500 tests that they say they administered. So
it's
clearly not the whole population.
Right.
They talk about how many are quarantined. They talk about their test rate. Positivity.
What's the quarantine number there, Roland?
Right now it's showing they have about, it looks like 35 in isolation and quarantine. There was a stretch of time as students were starting to come back to campus where they had about 100 in isolation quarantine for about 2 weeks. It stepped up in the last 2 days from 15 to 37. But I think the other thing they're showing is 6% of their quarantine capacity is being utilized right now. So what does that translate to? Something like
35 times.
16, whatever that is, 500 something.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't. It's just this. I mean, you must. If you just type in URI COVID dash.
Yeah, I haven't looked at it.
Yeah.
That's good.
And they update. It updates daily. Oh yeah, they're at a. You're right. They're at a 3% rate for last week, 1% overall since January. And
Since January.
they did 1,500 tests last week.
So your small number might start kicking in at 1,500. Shouldn't have too much of an impact, but yeah. So it does have an impact on what we do because, you know, to the extent that they're moving kids off campus to quarantine in local hospital or local hotels, we become the ambulance service for those students. That's an interesting problem.
Oh, the town provides the.
If you're in a hospital, if you're in a hotel in South Kingstown and you're sick, you need to go to the hospital. We get you.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I thought you meant from URI to the hotel.
No, they're getting their kids to the hotel from URI, but they're, you know, we're not clear. We haven't had to transport anybody, but
there been any response to the fine you set up?
we haven't had to issue any fines. There were 2 frat parties. URI University Police handled that. What are we seeing? The only other thing that's going on up there that, you know, is in that vein isn't so much a party as kids are apparently beginning to congregate at about 10:30 at night at the Emporium parking lot because there's nothing else to do now. So some of the, you know, Insomnia Cookies is open. You go up, you get a cookie and a Coke and you hang out in the parking lot. It's not like when I was in college. We were not hanging out at the Insomnia Cookie parking lot.
No. All right. So as an item G, did we cover that economic development committee discussion regarding data sources and?
No, but if we could put it off. I mean, if you want to show what you did, but all right, I'll say something about it, but I haven't worked with Jay Newsom to develop a dictionary of the terms in his database. I bugged him a little bit a month ago in advance of this meeting after getting him to put that together for us. But then I stopped and he hasn't come back with anything that looks like a data dictionary, which I think would be the next thing. So I could just tell, I'll just say, and you can correct me, that Henry and I asked the Economic Development Committee, told the Economic Development Committee about this committee. And I had asked Jay Newsom, who is a member of that committee, to tell us about the only database that the EDC has made that's really would be of interest to us, I think. And so in his database was a count of businesses in town done about 3 or 4 years ago. And he tried to find all businesses that were bigger than a single person working at home. And he had to go through a lot of hoops to get that. And so I wanted him to write down a little bit what his hoop action had been. He had to go to the Department of State. He had trouble getting a list of the businesses, even from the town, with correct addresses. He had to go through a lot of stuff and pull a lot of things together. So I thought his experience would be informative to us. Unfortunately, the one thing that was unfortunate about all this is that I think the Economic Development Committee decided to start salivating about the idea that maybe we were inviting them to do this again. And I thought I had made it very clear that this was a historical project. We were looking to see what had been done in the past, and we were not suggesting that this committee or anybody else was going to help them do this again. But I'm afraid that I might not have been emphatic enough about that. But anyway.
So what was his final count? How many did he end up with?
I don't remember. Do you remember the number, Henry?
It's like keeping in mind the data that he had was kind of old. And his, let me see, I'll pull that up. And he had 1,769 entities.
Yeah, I was gonna say about 1,600. Yeah.
That's how many are in the table. And
He had street address. He had owner up. He had. Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah, and he had. Well, Henry's looking at it, aren't you? Henry?
Do you have a classification of each business?
Yeah, I can. If I can share my screen,
that's kind of cool.
I could bring you through the table. Let me give it another shot to share. Hold on, please. Let's see.
Susan, did he say was this mostly Secretary of State registrations or?
Yes, mostly it was Secretary of State. And it was, he said it was just a mess. It didn't correspond well with what the tax office had. Yeah, here you can see.
Yeah, this is the table that I was able to build from his extract. And it's got stuff in there like an entity ID. And when you file a report with the Secretary of State, you get an entity ID once you open up a business. You have the name of the business, the date incorporated, under what chapter of the general laws the business was enacted, charter, whether it's a domestic profit, domestic limited liability, status is, what is a revoked entity, and the effective date of that, the purpose of the business, like, for example, sale of alcohol, and
last report.
And last report. But then it gets an address. They have to file an address in there. And that address usually is the registered agent. So
it looks like it was a data dump from Secretary of State. It looks like all the fields they would have had.
Yeah.
But that's why I wanted him to go through. Well, this is Henry's table. This isn't.
No, I built it from Jay's.
So it has Jay's table. Didn't have more.
No.
Didn't. Okay.
No, the last field in Jay's table was actually the zip code.
Okay. Okay.
And that's it.
Okay. But he had. Well, so this also suggests when he did it, because there's nothing here beyond 2013.
13.
Yeah, it's old.
It's at least 3 years since he did this work, and so that would be 17, and he had trouble finding more recent information, I guess, than 13. And I'm not sure about those dates, but anyway.
Henry, the purpose of the business consistent? Is that sort of a useful search field?
Yeah, so in other words, let's take an example. If you want to search on construction or small supplies, retail sales, what you can do is you can pull down the purpose and you can set up a filter to figure out what's in there. Now, what I had done too is I built a couple of queries, and the queries I had, these here, like I said, okay, I want to know something like Yeah, what the heck query was this one? This one was, it was just having information in there about, you know, the name, Data Incorporated, and the purpose,
Mhm.
right? So the purpose field, you can expand that to get a lot more information about what the purpose is. This is a free form field that's in, when you file the paperwork with the Secretary of State, excuse me, this purpose field is free form. You can enter it in on the form when you do
Yeah.
the annual report.
But I mean, the problem you're going to have is something like investing. It's not financial services. So if you're looking for financial, you're not going to find it because it's not investing.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, you could have a number of terms that you were looking for
Yeah,
related to.
real estate ownership as opposed to apartment, you know, it needs some work to make it useful, but that's interesting. Good. It's a good thing to have. That's neat.
No, it's just that I wanted to try something like really quick, just to see what I could put together. You know,
Yeah.
like for example, things with charter. I did a select on, you know, on charter. You know, you can select on any of these fields and do a sort.
Yeah.
So now charter was a field that was a drop-down field, was a limited, not a free field from the Department.
No, that isn't a free field. These are the entities you can put into the charter. So let's take an example. So if I blank out all of them and I go down and I say just well, I should
Yeah,
blank.
that's the one you want. That's really the only one that matters.
Yeah, you know, you can go through and blank out all the text filters
Okay.
and do limited liability, corporations, professional services, whatever you want. And the types of queries are SQL type queries that go against the data. Now the thing is, given other tables that are out there, if you start putting it all together, so in other words, the database is constructed of tables, and I'm using SQL Server to do comparisons from one field to another to produce information that we might want. It was just an experiment that I put together.
Mhm.
Didn't mean it means anything right now because it's too old, you know. But the one that I found, I think the most interesting, is, let's see.
Well, just let me say to the point of how old it is, that it was unclear at the meeting whether
Right.
URI or Roger Williams University college was keeping this up, because after Jay finished it, he'd turned it over to somebody. He wasn't quite sure to whom, but the idea was that they were going to try to maintain it. And he never got back to me. Well, actually, he wrote to URI and he didn't hear back from URI about whether they were maintaining it. So I guess they probably aren't. But it was supposed to be picked up. It was a lot of work. He put a huge amount of work into doing this because it was not easy. He couldn't just go to the Department of State and pull this out. So
it's a really cool list. I mean, I think this is potentially very useful if we could update it, get the dead businesses off the list and put whatever's happened in the last 7, 8 years on there. That'd be great.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you can use this as a building block and start doing things like, I don't know, real estate held by the company or occupied by the company, you could do some interesting things with this.
Yeah.
Cool.
And this, and lastly, another table that I extracted, I went out into the census data, and this is the town of South Kingstown census data updated to the last decennial. So that's in 2010. And that'll get updated again, hopefully, in December of this year. So I said hopefully.
If we get to December of this year.
Yeah, well, the Constitution requires this report to be on the president's desk on December 31st.
Constitution requires a lot.
It does. You know, but unfortunately, some people like to think they're suggestions. Oh well. So the thing is, what I will do though is, you know, it's interesting, Bob, is I'm going to go out to the Secretary of State's website to see if I can extract Jay's data, do an extract using an Excel worksheet, because once I extract the data, then I can take and import it into a database table, and it gives us something to work with, you know?
Yeah, I would suggest that you do that together with Jay so that you know what he had to do about cleaning it up and what, I mean, he ruled out some things like he didn't want individual at-home businesses and some other things for reasons.
Do you have a field in there for number of employees? Probably not.
No, I don't think so.
Doesn't have it, so that would be something we'd have to do with a local census. I mean, you could do.
Yeah, this is medium household person in poverty.
Yeah,
And
I
this
was talking about the other one.
data.
No, he's talking about the employees in the businesses.
Yeah,
We'll
so
talk
in
about Jay's database.
2012, all firms, we had 2,891 people employed, but that's 2012. And then it breaks it down by men-owned businesses, women, minorities, non-minorities, veterans, non-veterans.
That doesn't mesh with the other one.
No, it wouldn't. It's just too old. I mean, Susan, it's
It's not that far off. I mean, if we've got 1,200 or 1,600 firms in Jay's database and only 3,000 people employed, tells us something.
yeah,
Our firms are small.
indeed they are.
And even the ones that aren't in somebody's living room are still one-person firms quite often.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
All right. So let me stop sharing. I'm going to close this.
I'm sitting in world headquarters right here for my little one-person firm.
Yep.
Yeah, it works. Okay. So agenda-wise, we've been through everything. There's one thing I want to bring up that I'm kind of alarmed about. And the number of emails I got of people that could not make this meeting now until the rest of the semester because of teaching assignments. I mean, we are barely able to pull this together with a quorum. And I'm worried about that. And so the question I think that we have to think about is, if you can't make the meeting, you can't be on the committee. And that means we have to go out and recruit some other people. So.
Wait a minute. I'm not sure we could also change when we meet to keep those people in, because I mean, it was only Jocelyn who said she had a Thursday meeting for the rest of the semester. The other ones had a reason for tonight, why they couldn't come tonight.
Okay, so do you want to just leave it out there and table it for now?
Yeah, I think you should table it for now. But it is a discussion if people still, consistently can't make the time, we need to figure out when.
Yeah.
But before we drop those people, since they're each brings a lot of value to this, I think we ought to figure out whether there's just some other time that would work.
Yeah.
And when we did set this time up, they didn't know their teaching schedules for this year, so it's not surprising that now we've discovered there are some conflicts. So,
guys, I got to run to put the kids to bed. So, I'll catch you next time. And
Jason, can I get a motion to adjourn?
I mean, that's fine. I mean, if Jason needs to excuse himself, but I just want to say, like, I think the guests were definitely a lot of value added for sure.
Yeah.
But I wanted to understand, I don't know, I can't remember if we talked about that in July. So I just kind of wanted to understand how that came to be. And then, in whether it might be nice to have a couple other, like if everybody feels like that was value added, do we have another guest or two that we may like to have for next month?
That was my record.
Sure. I think there's value added. I'd like to start to consider, when we started this, it wasn't just about helping other boards do their data collection. It was about, gathering data for our purposes to develop a model that kind of pulls everything together. So just to think about that as we move forward, that we're not just a group that's going to do work for other people, but the idea was to have a repository and a coordination of data from different groups to help us with some projects that we've been working on for years, as far as trying to build a model of an economic model of the town, and have something that we can use to predict things like tax rates and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I remember the conversation about getting the holders of data, the custodians of data to the meeting so we could talk about what they've got, so you guys could start thinking about whether there was a there, whether there was some, something to dig into. So Jay Newsom's is actually an interesting database in that vein, because there's not much to it right now, but it has potential. I do think it's helpful. I think the data from the police department is potentially very rich, potentially very useful in all sorts of analyses. I think that being able to take some of these data and present them on maps is very important. But I think you're exactly right, Jonathan. We need to now look at the other ones. We should be bringing in somebody from the school department to talk about the data that they report, so that we can, sort of get our heads around that data set. We should probably bring the building official in to talk about the construction data sets that he's got. We should bring in the finance director to talk about the financial data, so that the committee members have got a sort of holistic view of what we have in our databases. What's out there to play with.
Yeah, I thought that's what we were doing in these early meetings, and that was very helpful. I'm a little vague though on the police department. I mean, he didn't have anything actually to show us. I wrote down all his traffic volumes and speed and whatever, but I don't really know what that stuff looks like. But he's got a database, the ICM or something. So we could, when we get to the point of doing data dictionary stuff, we could go and find out what all those.
Yeah, I have not had a chance to look at his database either. So I really don't know what's there, except that I know that there are traffic counts. We put little, tubes across the road, and we get traffic counts occasionally at key intersections. We've got accident data, which is potentially very useful in forming public policy locally. One of the things that I am going to ask the police department and GIS, Carol, to do is start looking at our accident data on a map, because we just have never done that. We have this impression that Middlebridge is the worst place in the world, but if you start layering in number of accidents, speed of the accident, if you start breaking things down, it may not be the reddest spot on the map. The reddest spot on the map may be somewhere else. We have to do that analysis. We haven't done it. I think that it is useful for you guys to talk to everybody a little bit, just to get some sense of what they've got. You'll think of things to ask, Carol, and you'll think of things to, ask about the police data sets. And that's part of what we need, is people just thinking about the data, because I love our folks. They're all wonderful, but they have jobs to do. They focus on their job. They're not necessarily imagining new ways to refigure the data, or rethink the data, or reanalyze the data.
I haven't
Can I
been
just jump in? This is Colleen. I was going to mention before Rob had arrived, they had mentioned some of the police reports that are on our website. So the police put out their annual report, which, Rob, you had touched on some of the, the speeding or, crimes in town, all that kind of stuff. So I think you folks wanted to take a look at the police annual report and some of the other reports that we do have on the website, if that's helpful. That might be helpful to see what they have, and maybe they can provide you additional information. So I think
I'll just say that I appreciate
we do have their annual reports posted right on the website, I think, with our other annual reports, Rob. We can take a look and make sure that they're there. So
yeah. I mean, what this committee is trying to do, though, is get beyond the sort of summary paragraph or the summary table and look at the data and see, okay, can we combine the accident data and the GIS capacity? Can we look at the traffic counts from 138 before URI, and then look at the traffic counts at the end of 138 and determine how many people are going off onto the local roads instead of staying on 138 throughout town or through town. It's that kind of thing that, you know, it's not what's in the table, it's what's not in the table. In some ways it's most interesting.
No, but to know, I mean, we do need to know what they have, how they,
Yep.
what they collect.
Yep.
So David, you were going to say something.
Well, I was just going to say, I think, you know, some of you have been on other committees and have some familiarity with, you know, what other committees do and what databases they may have. I don't have any familiarity with any of it. And I found tonight's guest very helpful just to learn about what they have and what they do with it. So I would be in favor of more of that. Just to educate ourselves and facilitate the flow of information.
And I actually think Colleen makes a good point that one of the things we can do as we bring folks in is have them start with their summary data. Here's our annual report. This is what we report. This is where the data come from. This is what we, you know, have in terms of depth of the data that doesn't make the report. That might be a good way to organize those presentations.
I just want to say I appreciate the responses, and that's definitely helpful for my thinking.
Yeah.
So Henry, did you want to bring certain people into the next meeting? Or
Yeah, I'd like to bring someone in from the school department that's got their numbers. I don't know who it would be.
Yeah, it's probably Raquel, their new school business official, but she's been on the job for about 2 weeks and she's dealing with a pandemic. I'm not sure next. I'm not sure it's going to be the best, you know, the best.
Okay.
Well, how about the building?
Yeah, we can get Jamie in. He's starting a new job too, but he's been in the department long enough that he knows the data.
Okay, so it's going to be the building official, Colleen.
Yep. And then maybe somebody, I don't want to put this on her plate for next month either, but at some point, some of the business license data from Susan Flynn, the town clerk, would be helpful. I don't want to have you guys drag her in next month either because she's crazy.
No, she's going to be in the middle of an election.
The election,
Exactly.
yeah.
Right. So the building data is easy. The planning department's data, maybe. I don't know what Carol got into. I came in late.
No, she just gave us, she talked very broadly about the levels of data that she can map, but not very specifically.
So it may be that sort of planning data, things like the number of planning applications filed, you know, the sort of operational data may be something worth hearing about. Let me talk to, we have another Jamie down there now. We have a Jamie Gorman in the building office and Jamie Rabbit in the planning department. I'll talk to Jamie Rabbit and see if he thinks we've got an interesting set of numbers to talk about. It's going to be the number of applications. It's going to be the type of applications, the percentage construction, the percentage of developments that are residential versus commercial. It's, you know, it's some of that's interesting when you look at it over time. I don't know. I'll talk to him, see what he's got. What else? We got the financial data, which might be worth doing too next meeting. I'll talk to the finance director and see if we can get him in.
Okay.
And then the only other thing that might be interesting would be the public services department actually has a lot of data. It's pretty boring data in some ways because it's all, you know, but they have very detailed data on roadway, road pavement conditions, road pavement maintenance cycles, durations, endurance, and all sorts of information about just how well our pavements hold up. Lots of information about vehicles and how vehicles hold up. It's very, very concrete, literally concrete numbers, but they've a lot of it. They probably have the richest data sets in terms of number of observations and operationally actionable information, but it's pretty hard to imagine what you're going to do with it outside of maintaining and managing their infrastructure and their equipment. It's interesting data, but
Yeah.
By the way, I just wanted to tell you, Roland, that I sat in on the Shepherd's Run development proposal
Yeah.
reviews, and they mentioned repeatedly that they saw that the town didn't want more school-aged children, and that was part of the rationale for their coming up. I mean, it really wasn't part of their rationale, but they used it to say, look, we're doing something that the town has told us you don't want. You don't want any more school-aged children. And so here we are coming in with a 31-bed hotel and a vineyard and a restaurant, and we're not bringing any little kids. And I just thought it was interesting because this legacy that the town has from the last however many decades of encouraging old people like me to live here and discouraging young people with school-aged children is still a thing that's out there.
well, that's because what he said was he had looked at the comprehensive plan and saw that was the objective, because
Right.
the comp plan is still the old comp plan.
Yeah, but the comp plan is reflecting, I mean, it's not the
Right.
first time that appeared in the comp plan, not in the 2014 comp plan, and it's not gone, I don't think, from the new comp plan. It might.
I think it is. I think it's
gone.
yeah, I think that objective is gone.
Yeah.
Anyway, I thought of you, Roland, when he said that.
But
Well.
indeed, as what Susan was saying, indeed, that is a legacy type
Yeah.
thing. Because, and you know what the interesting thing is, Rob? I mean, when I was in a classroom substitute teaching, and I go through the rosters, and I look at the names, and I knew their grandparents that I went to school with. So families stayed in town. But as far as new people coming in, it was pretty minimalistic.
Yeah. There's an old joke. This is being recorded, so I'll tell the clean version of it. It's an old joke about the difference between San Francisco and a small New England town. In San Francisco, you can walk down the street stark naked. People will look at you like you were crazy and then just move on. In New England, you can walk down the street naked. Somebody will look you up and down and say they knew your grandparents.
Okay. Are we ready to adjourn?
I'll just say, I just want to thank Susan for bringing that point up.
Oh, the
Before
school.
you do that, Henry, I don't know if you noticed, you have someone in the attendees, and I don't know if you bring in public or not, but, and then you have to set your next meeting date, I think.
It should be the fourth Thursday in the month, but
Fourth Thursday of the month. It's going to be the fourth Thursday in October.
Okay, which is the 22nd then.
Yes.
Okay.
Hey, Colleen, could you stay on at the end just for a minute? I got a question for you.
Sure.
Thanks.
Okay, can I get a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Meeting is adjourned at 8:51 p.m. Okay.
Nice job, Henry.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Thanks,
you. Thanks to everybody. Thank you, Colleen.
Be well, folks.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Hey, Colleen,